Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the finals are over, which means free agency, at least part of it, is allowed to begin. The question is, who should the Suns have an eye on, and will they have some action coming down the pike between now and when free agency actually opens on July 1st?
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Brendon Kleen, your host. Welcome to the show. I am a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Tuesday. We are free and available everywhere, so if it's your first time finding us, hit follow, hit subscribe, wherever you're finding the show, and you'll get a new episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday. We'll be here all offseason. Free agency, as we're about to hit on, has officially started. It's going to be a blast for the next month plus. Stick right here. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns each and every day. Become an everydayer. Wake up. We're here for you every morning, right in your feed. Come on this journey right along with me. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right. This is via Sports Illustrated. New NBA free agency rule. I've been teasing this, reminding you guys of it for a while, but it is here. The Boston Celtics are NBA champions. The offseason can fully begin, both in the content world and in the real world. Per the new collective bargaining agreement that the league and the players agreed to last spring, teams may now negotiate with their own upcoming free agents the day after the final game of the NBA Finals, which by the time you're hearing this will be Tuesday. We might already hear some news. We'll get to that in a second. Previously, teams were prevented from beginning those negotiations until the moratorium period of free agency, which was what? June 30th at like 3 o'clock Arizona time. Used to be midnight Eastern, 9 o'clock Arizona time, and there was tampering and all sorts of shenanigans. Now, the league has said, okay, we're going to have the moratorium, which we didn't even used to have, but on top of that, we're going to have this separate early access moment, this VIP club, where basically you're able to negotiate with your own players, meaning for the Suns, Royce O'Neale, who we will get to, meaning for, around the NBA, guys like Pascal Siakam are expected to sign contracts pretty quickly. Tyrese Maxey, who's technically restricted, but I'm not exactly sure how that frankly works. But of course, if a team just wants to come to a contract with their own player, he may never even actually hit restricted free agency after all. It could just go straight into a Sixers deal right away. That's the gist of what this rule is. We'll get to Royce O'Neale. We'll get to some of the other potential minimum targets that the Suns have their eyes on, or might have their eyes on. First, though, why I think this may be a fairly familiar sight for NBA fans, meaning a little bit of a delay, is related to none other than a guy who has caused this type of delay multiple times in the past, which is LeBron James. I'm not going to talk too much about whether the Suns have a real shot at this guy any more than I already have, because frankly, nothing new has happened. Which could lead you to just believe LeBron's going back to the Lakers, no big deal. I will remind you the Lakers still have not signed a head coach. Maybe that comes quickly as well if it is going to be JJ Redick, who of course was calling the finals for ESPN up until Monday night as well. He has a player option for $51.4 million. If he stays with the Lakers, he could sign a maximum of a 3-year, $162 million contract. He could sign a 3-year, $157 million contract with a different team, or he could go for a 2-year deal, maybe with a player option, what they call usually a 1+1, for $104 million, a little bit of a raise on this upcoming year. and of course that second guaranteed season if he were to opt out of that player option. Those are his potentials. But the reason I think it will cause that delay is, think about all the different teams that might have an interest in LeBron. All right? Let's look at the cap tracker on Spot Track. The Sixers, of course. The Lakers, of course. If you're talking sign and trades, I would add the Warriors. I would add the Knicks to that list. I would add the Heat, and I would add the Cavs to that list. So from there, you look at Warriors. Klay Thompson is a free agent. The Sixers, Tyrese Maxey, which is more of a formality than anything, but of course he's a free agent. The Sixers are expected to pursue Paul George, so now you're including the Clippers and Paul George. From the Knicks standpoint, you have OG Anunoby and Isaiah Hartenstein. From the Miami standpoint, Jimmy Butler can't actually agree to the extension that he wants until July 6th, but you have players on that team, including DeLon Wright, who are free agents. And with the Cavs, the extension for Donovan Mitchell, they haven't hired a head coach, potential trades. That might not be in this exclusive negotiating window with their own players. Actually, the Cavs don't have a ton of free agent players in the end here. But that's a huge ripple effect to include Warriors, Sixers, Clippers, Heat, Cavs, Lakers, of course, with their own, and they have D'Angelo Russell's option. Not to mention any of these potential ring-chasing destinations for LeBron, which, to me, I don't think he's going to the Clippers, so it's really just the Suns, I think, that would fit into that category. Some people are going to include the Mavericks or the Nuggets or something crazy, I bet you, but it's not reasonable, it's not realistic. The most likely thing is that he goes back to the Lakers. The question is when, and how far does he take it, right? What is he wanting? What is he trying to leverage here? Does he want... He's allegedly stayed out of this coaching thing. That could be a component of it. At least not maybe to leverage the Lakers to hire a particular coach, but maybe he is taking a back seat regardless, seeing who that coach is. Obviously, I think that he wants to make them feel pressure to improve. Do they make a swing for DeJounte Murray or whatever? Maybe bigger. Maybe Trae Young. Maybe, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's going to be available, but add him in there as a hypothetical. Jimmy Butler, Paul George himself, who I just mentioned is connected to this situation in a different roundabout way, right? But all that can't happen until July. So it's funny where the biggest dominoes, I still don't think will necessarily fall until all the dominoes can fall, because of the leverage that they're trying to create involves bigger moves, bigger things. So what I think we will see, big picture, is I don't think the Clippers will come to a contract agreement with Paul George. I don't think the Warriors necessarily will come to one with Klay Thompson. And I could see the Knicks situation getting a little bit interesting where Hartenstein and OG Anunoby both go out onto the market. So I think that's kind of going to be what's leading the news cycle here as this stuff all opens up. And it is nice, I think, for all of us fans, but also the league and everything, to have this come during the week. The finals could have ended on Friday, and then this all would have been happening on a Saturday, which would have been weird. Now we're here. It's going to happen. These headlines, get ready for them. But I don't think LeBron or all those other players that are at the top of this thing that I just mentioned are going to put pen to paper, even though they technically can, which means this all could still be held up at the top of it, except for some of the smaller players. Some players the Suns might have their eyes on when it comes to NBA free agency and those minimum contract offers that they'll be able to extend to some of these guys. So, who are those players that the Suns are going to be watching to see if they stay with their teams or not, and whether they'll be available come July 1st. We'll get to those guys coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, basketball, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the baseball MVP, the WNBA MVP, and more. Speaking of the WNBA, I'm going to look at odds for Tuesday. I will be at the Liberty Mercury game. The Mercury are currently 6-point home underdogs. That's brutal. They were pretty competitive with the Aces last week, narrowly lost to the Aces, nearly beat them, if not for some foul calls down the stretch. Giving 6 points at home to the Liberty, I kind of like that. So if you want to stay local, there's one for you. Baseball, basketball, tennis, golf, all of it at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's keep it rolling. So, talked about LeBron, PG, Clay, all those guys at the very top and how they could dry it all up for the moment until that time finally hits. I want to talk about Royce O'Neal to close the show. I have a couple of comps for you guys in terms of players who were acquired at the 2023 trade deadline, and then hit free agency, and then ultimately stuck with their team, which is, of course, what the Suns aim to be doing here with Royce. What numbers and formats can we be looking at for that contract? So we'll get there. Also want to remind you guys to check out Locked On NBA all offseason long, national level, great hosts. They got you covered every day as all the news around the league continues to churn as well. But let's go to Suns land, where we kind of take a peek into what the front office might have its eyes on here during this negotiating period. Which teams have some big maybes on their books that they're going to be negotiating with right now, starting Tuesday, that the Suns might gobble up as a minimum option if they do not go back to their team? All right, so truly, you can look really at the highest of highs with all this stuff. Like, I'm looking at Gordon Hayward, and I'm at least a little bit curious. He's making 30, but he was a shell of himself in the postseason. I'm not saying that makes me excited to go get him if I'm another team, but look, weird situation, got traded to the Thunder out of nowhere. Maybe you're looking that high. I don't actually want to start there. Where I want to start is DeLon Wright. DeLon Wright and Chris Dunn. These are two players we've talked about a lot. Two players who I think their teams certainly should be interested in retaining them. We've already heard from John Gambadoro of Arizona Sports here locally that the Jazz have an interest in retaining Dunn. They could only go up to a certain number. It's not going to be a lot, but it's going to be more than the minimum, which is all the Suns can offer. So does he go back to Utah? Does that happen right away and eliminate a target from the Suns list here? I think the same thing can be said for DeLon Wright, who is a little older. Maybe priorities are slightly different. Maybe money's not number one, top of the top. The Heat are in flux. It's hard for him to know right now if he'll have a significant role with Miami next year. So I could see DeLon Wright not signing a deal immediately with Miami during this stretch. It's also a very long stretch. Just as a separate point, it's long, so there's no rush. But I could see DeLon Wright pumping the brakes and then maybe still going back to Miami once he gets a gauge of this stuff. But how those things look will I think, set the stage for the rest of the Suns' offseason. On the wing, I'm looking at Kelly Oubre Jr. I got 4 for you here, all right? Kelly Oubre Jr., Derek Jones Jr., both players who are currently on minimums, who I could see potentially getting a raise from their teams. Now, there's a limit to how high they can go, just like I was kind of talking about with Chris Dunn, but again, more than the Suns could offer. Or do they go to a team with the mid-level exception or cap space, get a raise and leave Philly or Dallas, but still obviously be out of the Suns' reach? I mean, those are probably the 2 best minimum signings of the offseason last year, so those guys probably will want to make some money. Is that on their current team, or do they wait this again, this negotiating period, do they wait it out and wait till July? We'll see. Team players are only going to make deals during this stretch if it's a situation like maybe a maxi, or it is, and even then, the structure of it will be formatted in such a way that I would imagine he'll actually sign that offer, that new contract, rookie scale extension, after they make their cap space moves, but we might hear about it sooner. They're only going to do that if it makes perfect sense, because they cannot legally talk to other teams to get leverage or play games or manipulate it all. So Oubre and Jones are good examples of players where there's no real rush to go back. But if they did, that of course takes them off the board. If they don't, though, I think we still will hear some rumors. They're not legally allowed to talk, but they're going to at least say, you're probably going to hear reports like Derrick Jones Jr. is going to, test his, you're kind of already hearing this with Clay, test his options externally and, be on their way toward free agency and see what the market might give them as they look for a deal somewhere in the 8-figure range. You'll see stuff like that. So those two guys. Two more interesting ones, though, who are not minimum guys currently, but their market is going to be interesting for different reasons. One is Kyle Anderson, 31 years old, $9 million contract, unrestricted free agent. The Wolves do have early bird rights on him, so they can go up to a certain number, probably the max that anyone else would really give him. So they'll be able to be competitive to keep him. But of course, Minnesota has a big tax crunch, and we don't know what they're going to do. I think we expect them to probably keep Karl Anthony Towns. Is that a given? I don't know. If they keep him, I would think they'll probably try to upgrade on the margins if possible on top of that. Do they really want to pay that much money for Kyle Anderson? Or does he become somewhat of an Eric Gordon where, okay, I'm on my 4th contract now or whatever it might be. Gordon made more money than Anderson. It's not a 1-to-1, but yes, I'm comfortable in Minnesota. Do I really want to do that? I don't know. Maybe a bigger role on a minimum with a different team. We've talked about those 2-year minimums with the player option where for somebody like Anderson with 10 years of experience, you're probably guaranteeing him $6.5 million. If it's, a 1-year offer with Minnesota for 8 versus 6.5 with the Suns, these are the things we're going to start to see. So Anderson's a better example of somebody I think that truly, if he wants to go back and he's willing to take a pay cut, which I'm sure he will. I don't think a team's going to give him 9 next year. Maybe he just goes right back to Minnesota, and that's one we do see get done. That's a good example. One that I do not think we see get done, but I'm going to be watching and reading the rumors or tea leaves around, is DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton, $8.7 million this past season. Of course, was drafted by the Suns, or I believe drafted by Memphis, but played his rookie season with the Suns. We know how he fits with Booker. Been a minute, but would help this team. Smaller, okay, another guy that's kind of the same size as Beal, Book, and Allen, Gordon. But if they could get him on a minimum, my goodness. I doubt it. I think his market's higher than that. He's always been an underpaid, underrated player. I think somebody will just take the dive and go get him. But he was really, really injury-riddled this season. He's never really been able to stay healthy, even dating back to college. He had the academic ineligibility, and then he stepped away from USC. I believe, I don't remember all the details, but I think on top of that, he had injuries all the way back then. Maybe this is just the 1-year blip, right? Kelly Oubre Jr. scored 20 points a game for Charlotte, and he's on a minimum. Derrick Jones Jr., has made more than the minimum in the past in his career and dipped back down. It happens to guys. Melton's 26. He's in his prime. You would never think it, but didn't have a great year. Health concerns. Maybe it is one of those players. I'm not betting on it. I think somebody should sign him and will sign him, but it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. I think another one in this camp on the wing guard kind of rotation would be Gary Harris. Another smaller 2-guard, beating a dead horse a little bit with that, but that'll be an interesting one. As far as big men go, we already heard rumors on Monday that Andre Drummond is looking for other opportunities. Now, does that mean other opportunities where I make more money? Or does that truly mean I'm done with Chicago? I don't know. He would have to, give up his early bird rights, and he might have bigger offers, but hey, maybe the Suns say, you're going to maybe close some games for us. And shockingly, Drummond is only 31 years old. So that'll be one to look at. If he doesn't go back to Chicago right away, that'll tell me he's at least open to sacrificing money because they can give him more than a lot of teams can. If he moves on from that speaks some truth to the situation. And then I guess Mason Plumlee would be the only other one, right? Plumlee, who was acquired by the Clippers and then re-signed by the Clippers, but, not a great athlete, maybe not a playoff player at the end of the day. And they have Tice. We know Ty Lue is a fan of small ball sometimes. Honestly, throw Batum in there as well. The Clippers have a lot of questions. And again, they're a team that I expect to be held up with the LeBron, Paul George domino effect. They have James Harden to sort out as well. But again, even if players don't sign, them not signing could tell us they're available. Them not signing and being patient could give us an idea of what their market might be. So we're going to get a lot of information and a lot of clarity about what the Suns are looking at right away. Those are some of the names I'm looking at, but there will be more. And it'll start Tuesday. The Suns can also start negotiating with their own guys, namely Bol Bol, Josh Okogie, and the guy I want to focus on, which is Royce O'Neale. I have 3 comps for you of players at the 2023 deadline who were acquired and re-signed. What do those new contracts that those players got tell us about what Royce could be looking at and sort of what the machinations are when those negotiations happen? And does that change what we should expect between O'Neal and Phoenix? Coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, shout out Boston, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether that's a supercharger, roof rack, exhaust kit, LED headlights, or beyond. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So, keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's close things out. So, all 3 of my examples, as I was clicking through my tabs to hit the ground running with this segment, all came from the same trade, the same series of trades by none other than the Los Angeles Lakers, who we started this whole show with on the LeBron side of things. And this was, again, the 2023 deadline. So you probably know where I'm going. At that deadline, the move that happened like 12 hours after Durant went to the Suns was the Lakers leveling up, eventually enough to make a Western Conference Finals run, of course. And what they did is they went out and got D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley. That same trade ended up with Mike Conley in Minnesota. And who was the final piece of that? Utah. Not sure what they got. Can't fully remember. Point is, the Lakers re-signed Jared Vanderbilt last offseason. It was technically an extension, I believe. Maybe it was a new contract. 4 years, $48 million. All guaranteed. $10.7 million in year 1. All right. Of course, D'Angelo Russell signed a 2-year, about, let's call it like $38 million contract, and he now has that $19.8 million player option, which I referred to in that first segment. Pretty interesting one in terms of, it's an $18.7 million player option. I don't know where I got 19.8. very interesting from the standpoint of the Lakers making trades, their cap flexibility, potentially presenting another point guard option to a team that might need that, and everything else. But he got his money. And he got, frankly, probably more than most teams are going to pay him by way of coming to a team that needed him, that might need him to be a trade chip, and that had just given things up to acquire him. So, of course, I think you know where I'm going. I mean, you could even include Rui Hachimura in here, who got a 3-year, I think, $51 million contract or so. The Lakers are the one-to-one example for a lot of this, and history tells us those players get paid. Rui got $16 million in year one or so. Russell got about $17 million in year one, and they both got 30, 40 plus million guaranteed. That leverage goes a long way, especially if you play well. I would say both players were more valuable to the Lakers last postseason than Royce was to the Suns this postseason. So let's at least look at another example, which was Mike Conley in Minnesota, who, of course, was the other component of that deal. He wasn't up for a new contract, but this past season, he got a 2-year, $21 million extension. Now, of course, he's a little closer to Royce in terms of age, given that he is in his mid-30s, Royce is in his early 30s, and they're more in the same ballpark of value in terms of minutes and athletic ability and all that stuff. Mike Conley's, I don't know, just because he's a point guard, I guess, and such a respected guy, I kind of feel like he has more value, but he's smaller. I still think that Minnesota deal's good, is the bottom line of all of that. But from a Suns standpoint, to circle back to Royce O'Neal, yes, the Mike Conley thing's nice, but again, a little different because it was an extension, and Conley, kind of a unique scenario given that he's older but still valuable, etc. I think the more realistic learning lessons or comparison points are those Lakers guys. And they all got overpaid. They all got over market value. Again, I don't want to say overpaid like they're bad, but overpaid compared to what maybe another team would have paid them or what we thought they were in line for prior to the trade in the postseason. And so I think the same thing will be happening with Royce, especially given that the Suns are in even more dire straits in terms of the cap than the Lakers even were, right? So the same way we're talking about Russell as being important potentially to go to Atlanta for Trae Young or something, or DeJounte Murray, or whatever the trade the Lakers look to make is, you'd like to have that Russell salary. The Suns are even in that in a bigger way. They don't even have the flexibility or the optionality anymore because of the second apron to go. They're not thinking about a player of that caliber, but to get any player, to get anybody that's not a minimum guy or some kind of rookie scale person or something, the Suns need to stack up these contracts to have players to send out if they want to keep making moves. And as I've said all along, Royce knows that. Royce's agents know that. And, you know, tinfoil cap or a hat or whatever you want to say, Royce's agent, he is represented by Mark Bartelstein's Priority Sports, which is the father of the CEO of the Suns, and George Rousakis, I think is how you say his name. I could just be completely making that up, but I believe that's what it was. Same person who represents Tyler Kolek. So, as you know, we've been talking about, go check out those episodes for more details on what I'm talking about there if you have not already. It all just feels like it's lining up from the team side, from the agency side, from the history side. Royce is going to get him a lot of money. Royce is going to get a contract that I think NBA fans who don't quite get all the logic that I just laid out for you might laugh at, frankly. This might be one of those, like, what did they do? You know, the Pistons gave Jahlil Okafor what? Or the Pistons gave Marvin Bagley what? Last summer, the Blazers gave Jeremy Grant how much? You know, obviously, Royce O'Neal's not going to be making Jeremy Grant money. But it could be one of those contracts that comes early to round and circle back to the point of this whole episode. This could happen soon, this deal between Royce O'Neal and the Suns, given that Windhorst already basically said it's a lock to happen, it's just a matter of how much, and all the connections and everything I just laid out for you, this could come soon, this could be big, and this could be side-eyed by the average NBA fan. Not that you all care, you shouldn't care, it doesn't matter, because you know it makes some sense, and it's kind of what the Suns have to do. But get ready. I think we could get a Royce O'Neal contract this week. That'll wrap us up. Enjoy the madness, enjoy the rumors, enjoy the news. This time of year is fun, even though the Suns aren't going to be in the business of making the biggest of big moves, probably. It's fun to follow anyway. I'll be here with you every step of the way. Instant episodes as quickly as I can record them when any news does break. So if you get that Royce contract, I commit to you, I will have an episode in your feed within 12 hours of that, if not very much sooner. So again, hit follow or subscribe. Get that content in your feed day by day throughout the offseason. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Suns right along with me throughout the summer. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.